Ladies and gentlemen, it's day 14 of the push-up routine. Um, I'm up in the skull. We moving from 520 push-ups a day to 1,040 push-ups. I decided to go ahead and make a decision on that. I want to turn up a little bit. Um, Push-ups really been helping my mental lately. It's really been helping me out a lot. So I'm kind of just transmuting my energy with this. But enough talking, man. We about to go hit these push-ups, 1,040. We're going to be listening to Bob Proctor, You Were Born Rich, Part 1 Remastered on YouTube. We left off at 1 hour, 14 minutes, 39 seconds. We're going to go ahead and get started. Let's do it.
Wheel of that automobile, all of which your conscious mind is free to travel around and do anything it wants to do. Your body is programmed to drive the car. Well, geez, Bob, I'm sure at times you ponder over the long-range effects of these seminars. Do you merely get people excited and then once you leave town, forget it? Well, I attended your seminar when you were in Kansas City 10 years ago. I brought my 11-year-old son who was going through some trying times in school. He had been diagnosed as having learning disabilities, and he was really struggling. Listen to this. He was certain he was a reject. What a terrible thought to be running through the little kid's mind.
30, we got 29 left.
Many adults running around with that thought in their mind. You could have been sitting with that thought in your mind. You might be sitting with that thought in your mind. I'm a reject. There's no such thing as rejects. God didn't make any rejects. Which is, I brought Eric to the seminars. He learned that you can do anything or be anything that you believe you can. He learned to set goals and to achieve the goals that he set. Listen to this for progress.
29, we got 28 left.
There was both an immediate and a long-range change in Eric's performance. In that same school year, his grades spiraled upwards and he became an honor student. Eric attended Bay State. He is an Eagle Scout. He was listed in Who's Who in American high schools. He was editor of his school paper. He qualified for scholarships, that's plural. He had his choice for college. And at the present time,
28, 27 left.
At the University of Missouri, and he's on the dean's list. I feel a great deal of this can be credited to the fact that this 11-year-old boy learned he could do anything he believed he could, and he became a goal setter. Joanne concluded by saying, Bob, I just want to share this letter with you, as I really do not know if we would be able to tell this success story if I had not brought Eric to this seminar. I'll always be grateful.
27, 26 left.
And I guess Eric will too. And what was the big win? Was it the Who's Who in American high schools? Was it being editor of his school paper? Was it the honors that he accomplished that first year? Was it the college scholarships in college? I don't think so. I don't think any of those things were the big win. You know what the big win was? It was the one single idea that enabled him to do all these things. And one idea can cause you to make the progress this young boy made. We have a gentleman
26, 25 left.
where he is. He's a good friend of mine, Grant Sylvester. He's the president of Money Concepts for Canada. And Grant Sylvester hired us to conduct these seminars way back in the 70s for a large company that he was a senior executive in. And right across the country, they had a 53% increase in sales. Now that's hundreds of people. That's an enormous increase. I want you to think about that for a moment. Here's an idea that gave this little boy
25, 24 left.
gave Grant's company a 50% increase in sales. So you see, I don't really care what you do. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It's you that counts. And the more you understand you, the better your results you're going to get. Now, I'm going to run through a very quick idea, and it's very simple. Don't let the simplicity of this idea deceive you. What we're going to do is run through a concept and explain just how brain cells are built. I'm going to ask someone from
24,
the
23 left.
Tina, you're a good friend. Come on up front here, come on. All right, Nino.
Wonderful, Bob.
Give Nino a hand. Now, if you're sitting in your office or sitting at home, I want you to meet one of the best managers I know. And I mean that sincerely. I'm not just saying that to flatter Nino. I'm saying that because of the results that I see as people get. Nino was
23, 22 left.
kind enough to hire my son and daughter-in-law to go to work for them at the beginning of this year, and every month this year, they have earned somewhere between $20,000 and $45,000 a month. Now, you don't do that if you haven't got a real good manager drawing the best out of you. Management is the development of people. It's not the direction of things. So, Nino's a very good friend of mine. Now, Nino, I want to ask you a couple of questions. I'm going to do something. What I'd like you to do is hold out your hand like this. Right? Now, I'm going to ask you to close your
22,
eyes.
21 left.
Now, I would like you to look at that. I want you to see what that is. I don't want anybody to say anything. I'm going to put it in Nino's hand. You just close your eyes, Nino. I'm going to put this in your hand, and I want you to feel it. Close your hand and feel it. Now, Nino, tell me what that is.
Feels like a piece of metal.
Well, move your fingers around it and tell me what kind of a metal. What would you use that for?
21, 20 left.
Open the door. What do you call a piece of metal that opens the door?
Hey, Keith.
This guy's a real ham, and he put it in front of the camera, and I'm telling you, he'll take it away. You guessed it right, Nino. You win one of our cassette tapes. That is a key. All right? Now, what happened there? Let's stop and think what happened. Nino has sensory factors. He can hear, see, smell, taste, and touch. And when your sensory factor touch comes in contact with something,
2019
a light message is sent through a nerve passageway in your body. It strikes a group of cells in your brain. Those brain cells are activated, and the picture that's in the cells flash on the screen of the mind. So although Nino was not looking at this, which is a sensory factor, and it'll work that way too, he was touching the key, and that triggered the image on the screen of his mind. Now what I'm going to do, I am going to show something to Nino,
8.
and I'm going to ask him what it is.
19,
Nino,
18
I would like
left.
you to tell me what that is. A what?
Pen.
A pen. You think it is. You don't know what it is, do you? You're guessing now, aren't you? Now, you weren't guessing when you told me what that is. But when I asked you what this little metal object was, you were guessing. Is that correct? Now, Nino, what you're really saying is, I had cells of recognition when I touched this, but when I look at this, I have no cells of recognition.
18, 17
Now, we're
left.
going to build cells of recognition in your brain. I'm going to tell you what this is, and I'm going to do something with it, and as I do that, instantly, in a millisecond, cells will be built in your brain. That, Nino, has a little plunger on it. Now, as I hit that plunger, something's going to come out of here. You see that? That is a toothpick, Nino.
17, 16 left.
Gives you when you don't need anything, all right? Now, that is a toothpick. Now, that's no big deal. You could miss the whole message here. But you see, Nino didn't know what that is. You know what he was saying? I don't have any cells of recognition in my brain. Now, when you go home, you can tell Rose that you built some brain cells this morning. She can love more of you. All right? You take more of her home. But that's exactly what that is. All right?
16,
And we
15
just
left.
built some brain cells.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nino. Nino Spizzeri is, without question, one of the greatest real estate sales managers I've ever met. And you know, I told Brian something, and I'm going to tell you something. Whenever you go to do something, make certain that the people you surround yourself
15,
with
14 left.
are very successful. Carl Menninger one point in time pointed out that environment is more important than heredity. In other words, the people you find yourself surrounded by are more important to your success, your well-being, than what's built right into your genes at birth. And I suggested probably go and see Nino.
14,
I said, go
13
see Nino,
left.
go to work for the man and listen to him and do what he tells you. And he'll draw the best out of you. And that's exactly what he's doing. Now, we're going to build some brain cells with respect to the mind. All right? And as we build these brain cells with respect to the mind,
13, 12
we're going
left.
to picture of our mind right in here. And then as we get that picture in here, we can start making headway and making some of the adjustments that John talked about in the proper use of the program.
The points we just covered were simple, but vitally important.
And one of the most important points of all,
12, 11
the
left.
fact that you and I must have an image of our mind. Without an image, we have confusion. So that's very, very important. Now, I would like to introduce you to someone who I wrote about in Bourne Ranch, Heinz and Donna Dawes. They came to the seminar.
11,
and
10,
their
11.
circumstance was doom and gloom.
We had bought this house in July of 1975 after being expropriated for the Pickering Airport fiasco north of the city. And almost every evening I would come home and I would be extremely negative, started.
That's 10. We got 4 sets of 25 to finish out our first 520. We almost halfway there, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna give me some water. Matter of fact, I'll drink some water after we hit the 520. No water until we hit the 520 first. $25, $75 left.
To take out my frustrations on Donna because the mortgage payments and everything else was more than what we expected. And after you buy a home, you have to buy curtains and things like that. From 7:30, I believe, until 10:30 at night, I would probably say during those 3 hours my life changed totally. Because from an almost decision to having to sell this house to 3 hours later
50, 50
having
left.
a target of having a Cadillac paid for in 3 weeks, that is a tremendous change.
An important point here is that Heinz Dawes had been an insurance agent for 15 years. He had great information. He had heard many motivational speakers, but he was still at the financial point where he was going to have to sell his house. Heinz's problem was confusion. He did not have an image of his mind, and that's what made the difference.
Unfortunately,
75, 25 left.
if you want to call them motivational speakers, are geared on a very narrow, specific point. And yes, it may give you an immediate shot of adrenaline, but very quickly wears down because you are not given an understanding of how it works. If I know how something works, as opposed to simply being told blindly as to how to do it, I have a different understanding.
So that was the difference.
Yes, the very easy.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, that's our first 520. It's our first 520. I'll get some water. Snap. We got another 520 to go hit. Once again, we starting with 30 down. 30 down to 10. And another 4 sets of 25, baby. Come on, D-Rax. You could do it. Come on, D-Rax. You could do it. There ain't nothing to it but to do it. Come on, baby.
Easy, understandable way that Bob explains how
Come on,
the
baby.
mind works, how you control the mind with your thoughts, how the results are obtained. I got my Cadillac in 22 days after I made that promise to myself.
Now I'd like you to come with me, and just the same as we were able to help Heinz and Donna and millions of others, I want to help you. Watch closely. We will create an
30,
image
29
in
left,
your
baby.
mind that you can work with for the
Come
rest
on,
of this
baby.
program, for the rest of your life.
It's all mental.
We were talking about
It's all mental. This shit too
building
easy.
brain cells and developing an image, placing it in these cells for our mind. So what we will have
Shit too
then
easy.
are cells of recognition. When we think of our mind, rather than drawing a blank or drawing on a picture of the brain, we actually have a workable image that we can start to use. Now, before we do that, let me mention something here.
29, 28 left, baby.
Way back in the early 70s.
Come
I
on,
was
D-Rex.
fortunate enough to be on a program in Chicago
You can do it.
at a Human Resource Congress with a gentleman named
all
Frank
mental.
Goebel. Frank Goebel had been an aerospace
all
engineer.
mental.
He was the president of an aerospace company.
It's all
And
mental.
one day he was working on his budget, and he realized that 65 cents out of every dollar revenue coming into that company was going back out of the company again to employees for either salaries or benefits. And he suddenly realized he knew virtually nothing about people. Here he was spending 65% of all
28,
revenue
27
on
left.
something he knew virtually nothing about. He said, I knew an awful lot about
on,
engineering,
D-Rex.
and I
Head
knew a
up.
fair amount about aerospace, but I knew very little
Head
about
up. We
people.
keep our head up even if
And
we're
so
going
he
through a
said
hard
that he
time.
decided
Head
he would
up.
study some psychology, and fortunately for him, he
Come on,
ended up
baby.
collaborating with Abraham Maslow.
Come on,
Now,
baby.
Maslow made a breakthrough, the like of which is maybe only made every few thousand years. He had come to the conclusion that you and I have infinite potential. He's written a paper. He went on, he left aerospace engineering, and he went on to start the
27,
Foundation
26
Research
left.
Center out in Pasadena. In a
Lock in,
paper
come on now.
called The Productive Person, Goebel wrote,
26.
by nature,
You're already
you
halfway
and I
there.
are alike. By practice,
Come on,
we
come
get
on.
wide apart. There's the
One
difference
foot
in
in
our
front of the
results
other.
again. Now, he said the difference between the
Come
most
on.
dissimilar characters between the real achievers and the non-achievers, for example, seems to arise not so much from nature as from habit, custom, and education. He went on to quote William James, who concluded that we use a very small part of our real potential. And James said that
26,
most people
25
live,
left.
whether physically, intellectually, or morally,
Come on,
in a
baby.
very restricted circle of our potential
I
being.
feel it on my
We
chest.
make use of a very small portion
Come on, come
of
on,
our
come on.
possible consciousness
25 left.
and of our soul's resources in
Knock it
general.
out. It's too easy.
Much like the person who out of their entire
Shit's too
body
easy. Come on.
would get into the habit of using and moving only their little finger. I want you to think for a moment, if you had a child, and that child was laying perfectly still in its crib, and the only part of its body that was
25,
ever
24
able to move
left.
was its little finger. I'm quite certain that you would probably
25,
beg,
24
borrow,
left.
and if you had to, you would steal to
Come on.
find out what's wrong with that child. But isn't it
Come on.
strange that a human being can stop growing mentally at a very early age, and it can be virtually ignored? This is, without question, one of the most important subjects we can cover. I want to refer back to something Napoleon Hill wrote again that caught my attention when I first read the book. He pointed out in here,
24, 23 left.
somewhere in your makeup, there lies sleeping the seed of achievement, which, if aroused
23
and
left.
put into action, will carry you to heights such as you may have never hoped to attain. You know, as I think of this and as I read it now, I'm doing things today that 27 years ago, if anyone had suggested, I would have thought they were hallucinating. I take a look at my paycheck today. It's so completely different than it was when I first started to study this. In fact, the same people
23,
that used to pay
22
me
left.
$4,000 a year are now paying me $4,000 an hour. And the only thing that's really
22
changed
left.
is what's going on inside. Everything was already there. It's just a matter of learning how to use it. Now, he said, just as a master musician may cause the most beautiful strains of music to pour forth from the strings of a violin, so may you arouse the genius which lies asleep in your brain and cause it to drive you upwards towards any goal you may wish to achieve.
22, 21
Now,
left.
I'm going to put a couple of marks on the board, and I want you to really think seriously about this.
22,
You know,
21
human
left.
organizations, as we know them today, are not going to last much longer. And that is because we have built them on a false premise. These organizations have been built on the premise that you and I are physical beings, and we're really not. We are spiritual beings living in physical bodies. And we've been gifted with something called an intellect.
21,
And
20
by
left.
learning to use the intellectual factors in our
21,
personality,
20 left.
we can tap into the higher side of our own nature and improve anything in our physical world. But you know, to the average person, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And it may not make a whole lot of sense to you, as I just said it. But you're going to find as we go along with this, and as we keep working with this idea, it's going to make an awful lot of sense to you.
2019
When we
left.
start to study ourselves, there's only 2 points of reference we can go to.
2019
One is science,
left.
and is theology. There doesn't seem to be anywhere else to go. I have found there are
2019
only
left.
6 basic religions. I spent quite a bit of time living and working in California. I think there's something like 4,000 religions in
19
California,
left.
but everybody starts their own out there because there's tax breaks, you see. So, but you're still going to find there's just 6 basic religions, and they all teach us essentially the same thing. They teach us that we are non-physical beings. They
19,
teach us that
18
the
left.
concept is the same. You know, it's a strange
19.
thing. Most people don't even know much
18
about their own
left.
religion, and yet they say mine's right and all the rest are wrong, and they don't even know what the others are. I have found that every one of them has the truth in it. We are non-physical beings. See, the truth is something like the center of town. It really doesn't matter which side you approach it from.
18, 17 left.
You're in the same place. Now, the other area that we might want to look at is science. Science tells you your energy. As a matter of fact,
18,
a
17
DuPont
left.
scientist many years ago said that the electrons in the atoms of your body contain a potential energy of more than 11 million kilowatt hours per pound. Do you know that there's enough potential energy locked up in that thing that you're sitting in that we call a body to light up this whole North American continent for nearly a week? And then you'll hear people say, I haven't got any energy.
17, 16 left.
What a ridiculous statement. That's all we are, is a massive energy. Do you know this thing you're living in vibrates? It glows. As a matter of fact, there is an aura of energy around your body. That is the cells leaving your body. Your body changes at the rate of about 50,000 cells per second. And as the cells leave the body, new ones are created. Do you know you can photograph the energy leaving your body?
16, 15
way
left.
back in the early 30s perfected the form of photography where he could take and photograph
15 left.
mass, and the rays of energy coming from the body would penetrate the camera, penetrate the film, and you'd actually catch it on the film. And you'd photograph the density and the color of it. I would imagine you're very familiar with this, are you, honey? That's right. And you know, as the image in a person's
15,
mind
14
changes,
left.
the vibration of their body changes, and the density and
15,
color of this
14
energy changes, and changes dramatically. Do you
15,
know you've even
14
got a
left.
mental faculty where you can start to feel that energy
15,
coming from a
14
person,
left.
and you can determine the mood you're in very, very quickly. You can virtually read what's going on inside an individual. Now, as we study this, we're going to find that this side and this side is actually all hooked up. Think of this
14,
for a second.
13 left.
You see sitting here on the lectern
13,
a glass
13.
of water. Now, let's stop and think about this for a
13
moment.
left.
We call that glass. It's actually energy. Because of the speed it's vibrating at, we call it glass. We call this water.
13, 12 left.
That's what it is. It's water. But it's actually energy too. As a matter of fact, the ring that's hitting it is energy, and the finger that the ring is on is energy. Everything's energy. Everything vibrates at a different speed. Stay with me here for a moment.
12, 11 left.
What we're talking about here is energy. Now, while the energy is in the vibratory rate it's in that glass, we're
11
going
left.
to call it water. And we call it water because it's vibrating at a physical or a corporeal state. If you were to add heat to that energy that we call water,
11, 10
you wouldn't
left.
call it water anymore. Then you would change the terminology that you would use. It'd be the same energy, but it would be moving faster at the speed of vibration. Then we would call it steam or vapor. And we would call the energy steam or vapor because it's not in a physical vibration. It's now moved into what we call an astral vibration.
All right, we got 4 sets of 25 left, and that will conclude our 1,040 push-up routine. Need some water in me. Oh. Let's get some water in me. Oh, shit. Okay. 4 sets of 25, baby.
to that energy that we now call steam, you wouldn't call it steam any longer. You would call it air, ether, or gas. And that's because it's not in an astral vibration any longer. It's moved into now what we call an etheric vibration. But every level is the
25,
same energy.
75 left.
Now, as we take a look at this, we're going to let these lines represent levels of vibration, or as we more commonly refer to them as frequencies. And you know, each frequency is hooked up to the one above and the one below. There's no line of demarcation where one stops, the other starts. See,
That's
every
50.
frequency, it's like the colors of a rainbow. As they fit together, there's no place
50
where
left.
one color stops and the other starts. They're all joined together. Now, you're never going to see that with something you call sight. Sight is a physical sensory factor. You have to go to one of your higher faculties and you develop this through understanding. You start to understand. You see, the part of us that we cannot see, and the part we can
75,
see,
25
is
left.
all the same. This is just the flip side of the coin of this. Spirit always manifests through its polar opposite. We have the ability right here
Last
to
25,
tap
baby.
in to this great power that I choose to refer to as spirit, and we can tap in with an intellect, and we can cause this power to literally move into form, into something we call an idea. That idea must literally...
Ladies and gentlemen, that's 1,040 push-ups, baby. We locked in. We got straight to it. It's not to it but to do it. My name is D-Rex. Welcome to Rich Before Gaming. I'm going to catch you next time, and I'm out. Peace.